So have you noticed that when you're in the company of other people, possibly at the workplace or any other environment for that matter, there are things that impact and influence other people about you. And for example, it could mean your body language, it could mean how you carry yourself, it could mean whether your presence makes people comfortable or uncomfortable. Now, we have all heard of body language and the importance body language has in our lives, whether it's professionally or personally. But there are certain important aspects within body language that we need to understand. And I'm going to talk to you about three such aspects today. One of them is what we call as kinesics. The other one is proxemics. And finally, we will talk about haptics. Now, these terms might sound very complicated, but they're not. Very simple. And trust me, if you understand these terms and if you put them to use in your daily routine, it's going to make a huge difference in the way how others perceive you and how you are able to influence their thoughts and ideas. So without any further ado, let's get to understand the three terms, kinesics, proxemics, and haptics. The first amongst them is what we call as kinesics. Now, what is kinesics? When we talk about kinesics in general, we're talking about body language in totality. So anything and everything that you associate with body language, for example, facial expressions, eye contact, gestures, and postures, all of this put together is part of kinesics. Now, when you are in front of other people, your expressions do matter. How do you look? Are you looking happy? Are you looking nervous? Are you looking angry? Will make a difference to how people approach you. By default, a smiling expression is what you would like to have. But it's important that you also maintain a genuine smile, because if you maintain a fake smile, people can catch that quite easily, and then it would put them off. So whenever you maintain a genuine smile, it makes you look approachable. People want to talk to you, and that builds your personality at the workplace. Similarly, your smile is also complemented with your eye contact. So a lot of people either tend to look here, look there, even when they're thinking, they tend to do this. And what happens in that brief moment is that the moment you lose eye contact with people, they don't know what you are thinking about. Sometimes when you look here and there, it could also mean that perhaps you're not confident. And even worse, when people take their eyes off you when you ask them an important question, like, for example, if you ask someone, will you support me on this project? And people suddenly look here and there, it might mean that there is some lack of trust. So eye contact is another important aspect and dimension of kinesics. The third element within kinesics is what we call as gestures. Now, your hands are very, very important, not just when you're eating or doing something with your hands, but even when you're talking or speaking to people at large, because your hands will move in different directions. And the movement of your hands also suggests that you're interested, you're excited to share what you want to share, and that your hands are naturally moving in different directions. But a word of caution here, you don't want to overdo your gestures, because then it might look dramatic and it might interrupt the flow of your communication. Last but not the least is what we call as postures. Now, postures in simplicity mean the way you stand, the way you sit when you are in front of people. So what is important is you don't slouch, you don't get too comfortable in the chair, and you are establishing eye contact as you're talking to people, whether you're standing or sitting. Now, these are important elements, all of which form part of kinesics. And I'm sure most of you would be aware about this. So I'm going to spend some time helping you understand the other two dimensions, which are even more critical. One of them is what we call as proxemics. Now, imagine there is somebody who is a visitor, and that person has come to see you in the office. And as soon as you see the visitor, you start walking towards him or her, and you keep walking, so much so that you come within striking distance of that person. And you suddenly see that the other person has become uncomfortable by your physical presence. Has it ever happened to you? Perhaps you may not be the person who initiated this, but you might be at the receiving end of someone else's walk towards you and the way he or she approached you. Now, why does that make people uncomfortable? Because there is a zone of about a meter around us, which is very personal to us. And therefore, we do not want anyone else to invade that space. So when it comes to proxemics, we talk about space management. Now, you might have often heard people say this, I want you to give me some space, right? Now, when people say it like that, it's much more easier to understand. But even otherwise, when people don't say it, it's important for us to catch that message. So the next time you happen to meet someone and you come in close contact with that person, either in a meeting or perhaps you've seen someone in a corporate party, or let's say it's an award ceremony or any other gathering for that matter, it's important that you stop at a distance of at least one hand. Perhaps you might want to keep slightly more distance. This is important because you don't want the other person to get uncomfortable. So imagine it this way. The next time you walk towards someone, how much space do you require so that you can freely extend your hands to shake hands with the other person? That will give you an indication of where you're supposed to stop. Because if you don't stop and you're walking too close, you're making the other person start feeling uncomfortable. And that's not such a great thing. Of course, Proxemics is also impacted by cultural norms. For example, in the Asian cultures, it's often seen that people tend to slightly come closer, whereas if you look at the Western culture, the distance might be slightly more. So you've got to be also able to catch that depending on what kind of social norms do you follow in your organization, right? So you might want to approach and then step back just to make sure that everyone around you is comfortable. Having said that, you don't want to really maintain a COVID-like a distance wherein people had to stay away from each other just to make sure they're not infecting each other. That's not necessary either, but maintaining a safe distance, a positive distance without interfering or invading the other person's space is absolutely critical. Right? And then finally, what we have is haptics. Now, a lot of times when people approach each other, it is also seen, especially in the workplaces, that there is some kind of touch involved. And touch is a very common human phenomenon because using touch, we express affection, we express respect, we express motivation for others. But touch can also become very, very intruding or, for that matter, uncomfortable, especially if it is not done the right way. So one of the basic things you could follow is to make sure that when it comes to the other gender, you avoid touch as much as possible. So I'm not talking about the touch that happens when you perform a handshake. That's a very natural one. That's a professional one. But let's say you want to pat someone on their back, or you want to keep your hand on someone's shoulders because you want to express motivation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that feeling. But you never know how the other person is going to conclude what you just did. And therefore, it is important to maintain some distance even when it comes to your own team members, or for that matter, the subordinates who report into you, or perfectly, it could be your manager as well. So it could be any person at the other end. It could be a person from the same gender as well. So it's not just that you need to showcase this gender sensitivity when it comes to other genders. But sometimes people are not comfortable with touch. Okay. So that's something which you need to catch as well, because that could also mean that you are crossing the limits at times, even if you don't intend to, of course. So I'm not suggesting that every touch is a bad touch, but you've got to be able to understand that some people are not comfortable with it, and therefore you've got to maintain that distance. What you see here in the image is absolutely a no-no. Because you can sense the other party immediately getting uncomfortable with it, and therefore it needs to be avoided at all cost. So haptics basically talks about the physical contact. Physical contact can do wonders to someone's confidence if done the right way, but if not done the right way, it could also have severe repercussions. So it's very important that when you come in physical contact with someone, especially at the workplace, you are mindful of these important things. So that basically is what these three elements stand for. And when we talk about nonverbal communication, you have to make sure that your kinesics, your proxemics, and your haptics are in place, because all of these three put together is what will make you influence people, impress people the right way. And if you go wrong here, in spite of the fact that you're well-dressed, you're well-mannered, you're saying the right things, sometimes it could work against you if you're not aware about any of these elements that I just told you about. Okay, so make a note of this so that the next time you are in a professional conversation, you do all the right things for the right reasons and you're not caught on the wrong footing. Yeah. And of course, if you have team members like that, then you owe it to yourself to explain those people what is the importance of kinesics, proxemics, haptics, especially in the professional forum. And if you do it the right way, of course, people might at times feel taken aback, but they will definitely thank you later, because these things will always ensure that you never go wrong in terms of your presence at the workplace. I hope these points help you every time you have a conversation or every time you meet someone, and they help you to create the right impression and make sure that you feel confident in the company of other people as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again very, very soon.